You want some variation out there. This is, I'd say often, all in all, that detection is doomed when you see a rate changes like this. This is out of my real world job. We do a certain amount of looking at the way in which people mishandle data inside the corporation. And this kind of stuff is holding up. I just can put 3 of them up here. But at a domestic software house, at a trading bank, and a pro sports team, a single user accounts for what percentage of data handling violations. And by the way, we strike out the system administrators here just to get stability. Because one thing that system administrators do is violate file permissions on purpose reliably. I mean, that's part of what they do. 50% of the events from a small percentage of the users. This shouldn't come as a surprise, but there you are. This is a picture of the bank. This is a scale in which I am rank order across this way and log of the number of events they're causing per day. And this is a sigmoid curve for those of you who've done this kind of thing. That'll look familiar. There's not a surprise in here, in other words. There's not a surprise. There's a number of people who do nothing. There's a few number of people who are really your problems. There's a huge log linear piece in the middle. This is showing up in, of all things, just looking at how do people mishandle data inside large enterprises. This one is perhaps more fun. After stumbling across the other stuff about sine curves and the workfactor, I thought, well, what do you look at if you see the same sort of thing in violation rates? This is a domestic chip fab of some enormous size. This is the rate. In other words, things get worse toward the end of the week.
This is the don't buy a car made on Friday.
Right. This is an Asian chip fab. You tell me what cultural difference is showing up here. I have no clue, but you tell me. This is the domestic software house. This is a trading bank in which the number of events is reverse to the severity. Few of them on weekends, but they're important. Many of them during the week, but they don't matter. If that doesn't prove calculation, I don't know what does. Calculating in a sense of I'm going to get them. This is calculation. I don't know what to make of it. It's fascinating. But the fact is I can predict things with this. This is fishing as a job. This is the number of unique fishes per day done over a week interval. It's a job. It's a job. There's just no doubt about it. That being said, this is the kind of thing that we have to work with. And so where does it lead? Where does it lead? I think predators are the reason that prey evolve. That's true in nature. Why would it not be true here? Virulence is a term of art in medicine. And what it says is how bad I cough and sneeze. If I cough and sneeze really bad, I'm likely to transmit my disease faster. The marker for how good is your immune system is how virulent the bacterium is, for example. If your immune system is going to kill it for sure in place, it's got to move on from me to Gene to Becky to whatever. It's got to move faster. And so what you would expect from evolution, if you want to treat this just as evolution, what you'd expect from evolution is it moves from a large number of things that can infect you to a smaller number, and the smaller number, because of selection pressure, are those which are more virulent. And we've seen that. The doubling time for viruses, every time there's been a big virus outbreak, the doubling time has been faster than the one before. This actually holds up. Infectious agents don't cross species boundaries. You want to avoid general collapse? Have some species boundaries. By the way, I notice in rooms like this, there's now a lot. You go to security conferences, the species boundaries are more pronounced than they are anywhere else. What does that tell you? It's that the smart people know what's going on, and that's what they do. Corruption of the immune system is the worst. Whitty was an example of that. Corruption of the immune system is the worst for you and me. What a surprise. But we see this already, so we should expect more of it. Parasites don't kill their host. Botnets don't kill their host. Chris Weisopel believes, Wellpond, a guy I used to work with, claims that botnets are better managed than your average home computer because they're an asset. That might be testable. That might be testable, in which case it would be fascinating. When there's a paper there for somebody. And then, of course, Stephen Jay Gould's famous remark that evolution is never smooth. It's punctuated equilibrium, and I would argue that the internet was the biggest one in our career so far, in that it made it, everybody had to play, there was no doubt about it. It said that preys and predators were no longer location dependent. You can't live in a good neighborhood. Every sociopath is your next door neighbor. That the force on opposing you is proportional to the bandwidth they've got or can steal. That because of the internet, the pressure for commoditization is so great that I don't know whether it's the internet caused the monoculture caused the internet, but they're tightly connected together. There's no doubt about they're connected together. The sudden ability to work everywhere made the demand for commodity computing go through the roof. And that's how we got where we are. That's a punctuated equilibrium. We're probably going to have another one. Don't get me wrong. There's probably another one. If you haven't seen it, Richard Clark, who I was talking about, the guy who was the cybersecurity czar, he's got a book out talking about exactly that. It's a work of fiction. You may or may not like it as a work of fiction, but this is what he's talking about, another equilibrium punctuator. That's what the focus of his book is. Data. Here's a core thing. I think that data has value, and more to the point that I think it's a growing fraction of total corporate wealth. If it isn't, then the unit value of data is falling. We have had 35 years with Moore's Law of 1% a week in terms of what you can get for your money in computing. We've had better than that for disk. We've had better still than that for bandwidth. That says that data and data in quantity and data in motion in quantity is the wave of the future. And as such, those numbers, 1% a week, the Dow Jones over the last 40 years has risen by 1/8% a week. So unless the unit value of data is falling fast, the percentage of total corporate wealth that is data is rising. And that should change something. It has value. It really has value. And the total retained volume is going through the roof. Those are Gardner numbers. The optimal computer changes. I think these are the doubling rates, and even if they're not the doubling rates, they're close enough for the purpose of doing graphs, 18, 12, and 9. That gets you 2 orders of magnitude for CPU per decade, but 3 for storage and 4 for bandwidth. That says that the future is data rich and it's data in motion. Why is Verizon selling the Fios service, for example? They want to sell you movies at home. That's data in motion, and lots of it, for example. The winners are people that have the most information in play, and the losers are the ones that have too much, and it is security technology that draws the line between those two. And so I think the future that we have to worry about here, the real future, what I'm saying as a quant, looking at all those graphs and things, is that I think the future is about data. No offense to those who worry about networks and infrastructure and everything else. I think the future is about data, and I think that the security of that is where the action is. And I don't care whether you want to talk about confidentiality, integrity, or availability, or whatever. Security is what distinguishes data that has value from that which is not, or as Whit Diffie would say, if it weren't for security, computing would be free by now. Anytime you have threat increase that is substantial rising threat increase, you have to shrink your defensible perimeter. This is true of animals on the plain in Africa. It's true for the military. It's true for data. We cannot protect, the whole bit about having no corporate perimeter, absolutely true. The Jericho Forum is dead right about that. But at the same time, if the threat rises and you're going to deploy constant counterforce, what you can defend gets smaller. And so I think to a large degree that the correct contracted perimeter comes down to data objects. We are going to have protection around individual data objects, or protection arrayed at the level of individual data objects. That brings us to an interesting idea. Where do you put that? I think you put it where state changes happen. State change like evaporation, or in this case, data moves from at rest to in motion. The fabled write once, read never media is not of interest to me. What is of interest to me is when I launch an application, I open a file, whatever it is, where data goes from at rest to in motion. If I do not have my surveillance or my controls or whatever it is deployed there, I lose. Because just as was said earlier, the difference between digital value and physical value is I steal your car, you'll notice. I steal your data, you'll never notice unless you stumble across the misuse. And that being said, you cannot control what you can't see. Good old Don Rumsfeld, for all the press made fun of him, it is the unknown unknowns that matter. That is the smartest thing a cabinet secretary has said in my lifetime, and everybody who made fun of it proved they were innumerate, at least as far as I'm concerned. This is exactly where it is. And if you don't see it, you can't control it. If data escapes your view, it also escapes your grasp. And therefore, I think if we're going to measure things, we've got to do it at the point of use, and if we're going to control things, we have to do it at the point of use. I think losing propositions are content inspection. No offense to anybody who's working on that, but encryption beats you, much less pig Latin. Anomaly detection. All you do is you sit down and you put in an anomaly detector like an IDS, and you turn the knob to how much work factor can I deal with in dealing and getting rid of false positives, and you adjust the knob to where I've got 2 FTEs of people reading the false positive reports or whatever it is. That's all you can do. Signature finding. We can't keep up with it. We just can't keep up with it. In a sense, we got to do it, but we can't keep up with it. I think what we really want going forward, looking at the future and looking at those data, is I think we want data protection that's inescapable, that's invisible.